Right here?
Right here, right here. Good afternoon. This session is called Playing with Fire, How to Rebuild with Resilience. New Project Play research shows the average youth athlete lost 7 days annually to extreme weather, and that was before the fires of Los Angeles consumed neighborhoods, parks, pools, and schools. So what can be done to protect sports and play in a warming world? We're going to break up this session into two parts, the personal and the professional. First, the personal. In January, devastating wildfires across the Los Angeles area killed at least 29 people and forced tens of thousands of people from their home. The devastation was the result of many factors still being teased out, but this we know. The fire hit after a long drought in LA and was an event that scientists say was made worse by climate change. Our hearts are with all those who have suffered immense loss and are still recovering. One of many people impacted was 10-time Olympic swimming medalist Gary Hall Jr., who lost his home in the Pacific Palisades fire, a home where he used his pool to teach children how to swim. Gary is also a longtime friend of Project Play, having attended the very first Project Play Summit in 2013, and we have him here today to share his story. Gary, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be back.
First, we're glad you're safe.
Thank you.
How is the recovery process going for you?
The last couple months have been nothing short of whirlwind, so spun around. I lost my home, my business, and all worldly possessions. It was a traumatic, you've got the video, this is what's left of my home. They talk about those tombstones, the chimneys, that the only thing that remained. I had a fireproof safe. There's my 1962 Volkswagen microbus, my first car. That broke my heart more than maybe as much as anything. The Olympic medals were in a fireproof safe, and I brought what I found inside the safe. And
that's one of the medals.
That's two of the medals melted together, a gold from Atlanta and a gold from Athens.
Wow.
And so devastating, not just in terms of personal loss. My swim school, Sea Monkey Swimming, operated in the Palisades for 5 years. Hundreds of families came through, and you're getting to know these kids. I'm in the water with them, working at least once a week, from the time they're 2 to the time they're 6. So these families I know really, really well, and I know over 100 families that have lost their home in this fire, and it's devastating to the community, a once very beautiful community.
Take us through that day and what happened, and how do you make the decisions of when to leave and what to take, and what did you end up taking?
The day started out chaotic. It was in the news. We knew the storm was coming. Strong winds were predicted, 60 to 80 miles an hour. I woke to the sound of the pool cover flapping around in the backyard, so I spent my first 45 minutes upon awakening wrestling with a pool cover against these winds, trying to get it back into place. Finally was able to do that. I had a scheduled weekly call with my scheduling person, was on that call when I noticed a little bit of smoke out of the backyard window and didn't think anything of it. That call was not longer than 10 minutes. I hung up the phone, I walked into the kitchen, I could smell smoke, I looked out the window, I saw a plume at the top of the hill that I lived on. I called my girlfriend who lived nearby, only 5 minutes away, and said, looks like there's a fire, maybe you shouldn't go back to your place. I thought it was closer to her place. I said, why don't you come over here until the fire department comes and puts it out. By the time I had said that, the plume had doubled in width. Another 1 minute, and flames were visible and racing down the hill at 60 to 80 miles an hour. Not just this wall of fire coming toward the house, but catapults of embers, baseball-sized embers, just shooting down the hill and hitting roofs and seeing houses down the hill from me starting to catch. I had about 3 minutes between when I saw that plume and opened up the back of the car and trying to load stuff into it. I put one painting in there, and the embers were raining down so heavy that I just grabbed my dog and my insulin. I have type 1 diabetes, jumped in the car, and barely got out of there. It was scary. It was a scary thing. Also quite amazing, devastating power or something that is so big like that, and that proximity. I've never experienced anything like it.
You competed at some of the highest levels of sports and competition and faced some immense pressure from an athletic perspective. Did that in any way benefit you in a moment like that?
I think that in sport, the people that do well in sport, and also builds this kind of characteristic is remaining calm in chaos, right, and clear-headed. And my response was extremely pragmatic. I felt like I knew it was time to go, knew that I was abandoning everything and that it was unlikely that I would see any of it again, and just did what had to be done. And it wasn't really until, wide-eyed later, I was able to kind of describe everything that had happened. But your only choice is to act when you have moments.
You teach kids how to swim, right? That's been a really important part of your life. What's next now for you with the swimming school or maybe other ventures? Are you going to keep this going? And
Yeah,
where?
I love teaching kids how to swim. Like, working with kids brings so much joy. And so, yeah, Sea Monkey Swimming will rise again, and people are asking, you've got to be resilient, you got to rebuild and everything. Pacific Palisades and the affected areas in Los Angeles, they'll rebuild, and it'll take time. But there's just not enough families there to, reopen a swim school. And so, I'm looking around. Obviously, it's only been a couple months, so I'm taking inventory of, what these next steps are for me. But yeah, I'll definitely get around to open up the swim school again, and also working on another project that I'm pretty excited about, sports betting.
Share that. But there's a youth sports tie to it as well, right?
Well, there's a benefit to it in that we all see, DraftKings now making an entry into Super Bowl advertisements, and they're everywhere. And this is a company that was barely existed 5 years ago, and so they're obviously focused on the big sports. But I want to open up a sports betting platform in the sport of swimming and expand into other Olympic sports, and it potentially opens up new revenue to help support these sports at a very critical time when the House ruling is really cutting into collegiate programming, and that's something that Team USA has relied upon for such a long period of time, the NCAA pipeline, and so we have to do something about it. Somebody has to step up. There's such a finite amount of resources in terms of sponsors, and so competitive on that front that but. Maybe we can do something in this area.
Yeah. Last question, as Palisades rebuilds, in what ways do you think recreation should be part of that? How should they maybe be thinking about planning as they rebuild?
Yeah, community leaders need to put their heads together and figure out how we can make sport accessible. That's why we're all here. We believe in this, and we know the benefits, well established. The reason why I taught out of my backyard pool is because you can't find 5,000 square feet on the west side of Los Angeles in that neighborhood. Rents in Pacific Palisades, that would be something like $30,000 a month. That's a bit steep for a swim school, right? And so we need to make this part of the community rebuild. This is a place that prided itself in being a great family-oriented neighborhood. And we have to make sure that when we rebuild, we have space to teach kids how to swim. And play other sports. We live in a time climate change is happening, and I grew up in Phoenix. The temperature is 120 degrees there in the summertime, and so swimming was a great option. It was that or bowling, air conditioning, bowling. So yeah, obviously I'm a little bit biased. I'd love to see more pools built. There's not enough pool space in Southern California.
Yeah. Well, listen, Gary, we're so glad that you're here and also that you're safe, and we really appreciate it. Please give a round of applause for Gary Hall, Jr. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. Thank you. So we want to shift now to our next conversation to explore how climate change is impacting youth sports and bring our next speakers onto the stage. The reality is that how or if children continue to play sports outdoors is going to continue to be affected by climate change, and the challenges are not going away. So if we look at a first slide here, in a recent Aspen Institute survey, youth sports parents nationally estimated that their children lost about a week of sports practices or competitions in the past year due to very hot temperatures, wildfires or wildfire smoke, flooding, or changing winters. Black parents who are more likely to live in geographic areas that are vulnerable to weather disasters reported twice the number of sports cancellations than white and Hispanic parents. If we could shift to one more slide, you can see that here in California, youth sports parents estimated their child lost 13 days of sports due to extreme weather, more than New York, Texas, and Florida. So what can be done to protect play in a warming world? We want to add a couple more voices to the conversation. As we want to bring out Matt Libber. He's Executive Director of the Maryland SoccerPlex, where he oversees 24 multi-purpose fields and an indoor sports venue. And we have Jessica Murfree. She is an assistant professor in sport administration in the Department of Exercise and Sports Science at the University of North Carolina. Jessica researches the effects of climate change on sports. Thank you both for being here. Jessica, first, how would you assess how prepared community and school sports providers are when it comes to climate change?
John, I think cynically, not very prepared at all. But that's because this is an environment that's continuously changing, and it's hard to be prepared for something that is ever evolving. But we have a lot of tools to become more prepared. And frankly speaking, there's not a lot of excuses to be continuously unprepared because of those safeguards that are in place, including policy and law and things that are enforced and implemented to help protect people.
Matt, how about the sports facilities industry? How are they doing?
We're not. We're not prepared at all. Plain and simple, we're at the tail end probably of an arms race to build facilities in the U.S. And I mean, I think we all can agree there's not enough facilities that we have, but we're not putting climate change in the equations when we're building these facilities. It's who can build it faster, bigger, better, and we're not prepared at all, and it's going to come back to bite us at some point. And the problem is it's super expensive to do some of this. And the other one, we kind of learned this through the pandemic. Nobody wants to be first in a highly politicized conversation. The facilities that shut down for COVID early had a lot of backlash, and the ones that stayed open forever got a lot of backlash. So you're trying to pick a side, and it's very difficult for facility operators and owners to figure out what they want to do, and nobody wants to be first.
So as a facility operator, you've got a major complex. What are you doing? What changes have you been making because of climate?
We're trying to be as sustainable as we can and do our part in that. So we installed 1,300 solar panels on the roof of our field house. Now, it only covers about 70% of our electric bill, but it's moving in the right direction. For any of the grass nerds in the room, we're transitioning from cool season to warm season grass. Of our 21 grass fields, 14 of them are now Bermuda grass. It uses less water, less pesticides, less everything, less manpower to take care of. We're at the end of life for 3 of our artificial turf fields that we're debating about going back to natural grass because it's just too hot to play on in the summer in Maryland. So we're also seeing the extremes of weather. So what used to be a rainstorm in Maryland would drop maybe an inch of rain. Now it's dropping 4 inches of rain. So we retrofitted all of our fields at $150,000 per field to have drains in them, and we haven't canceled a game for rain since then. So we're trying to do what we can.
Jessica, you study this quite a bit, and I know not just like at the youth sports level, but at all levels of sports. What should be like the expectation for youth sports, particularly is it happening at the pro level, the international level, the college level? Like, are they doing enough? And so what's a fair expectation of people in youth sports?
Yeah, I think that youth sport and community-based sport has a lot to learn from the major sport organizations, professional leagues, college leagues as well. They're setting a lot of the standards in really positive ways. FIFA implementing the mandated water breaks is a great example. But we're also seeing professional sport at the largest level reschedule to accommodate climate changes. They're playing at different times of day. Being amenable to those sorts of changes is really positive, but grassroots, community-based and youth sport don't have the flexibility of resources like a lot of the major organizations do, which is a challenge. So there are other things that can step into place that might not require as much expenditures, and just being cognizant of the policies and who enforces those, where to find them on the internet or at the headquarters or the community office or in the clubhouse stapled to the wall. Knowing where those things are and how to access them and answer questions that parents might have would be a huge thing. And imagine at the larger scales, these would be the main questions that member organizations or federation governing bodies would have very similar questions at the major level too.
Matt, is that doable? Like how viable is it for youth sports to be able to adjust to this, and what's needed?
Yeah, there's a huge logistical problem for it, and it's for several reasons. One, climate change affects every area of the country very differently. So we were talking previously, like people in the Pacific Northwest are talking about how it's raining even more up there, but then you have other parts of the country that are in huge droughts all the time. So coming up with a national policy is very difficult. So it's going to have to come down to the local levels. And then when you have governing bodies trying to jump in and do that, it gets very muddy in the water about what's right and what's wrong and who's in charge and who's making what decisions. So there's a lot of logistical challenges to try and figure this out. Doesn't mean we can't do it. It's just somebody has to step forward and figure this out.
I want to share another side from our youth sports parent survey. This is another result. We recently had some results come out. We asked parents, if weather and disaster events continue to impact youth sports scheduling, would you be amenable to sport providers changing your child's primary sports season to another time of year? So for example, maybe one day we're moving football from fall to winter, or maybe to spring. 48% of parents said yes, that they're amenable to changing the sports season. 35% said no. 17% said they don't know. Basketball, soccer, and football parents were slightly more open to this than baseball parents. Jessica, is this doable? Is this viable? Like, how much should youth sports providers, parents be thinking about? We may have to be more uncomfortable moving forward to let kids play sports.
Yeah, I think there's sort of two glaring points here. The first one is based on these changes by sport type. I'm not surprised to see that order really at all, because we get really accustomed to the status quo of sports seasons. We survive a gloomy, gray, cold winter, and we're now in the mood for sitting outside, eating peanuts, and watching baseball. Going through the summer, recovering from vacation, back to school season is also football time. And we're very, very, very used to that. The grocery stores, the commercials, things reinforce those norms, and that's not a sustainable way moving forward. And another thing that we can pull from the professional sport leagues is that we've seen soccer World Cups reschedule, we've seen major sporting events reschedule. It can happen too at the community and youth levels, and it will have to if sport is going to survive the climate crisis. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of buy-in. If anything was a proof of concept of this, my colleagues and I found that the pandemic really showed us that when things are catastrophic, when they're scary, when they're changing, we want to have sport so badly that we'll do what it takes to adjust. And just like the COVID-19 pandemic, we're experiencing a massive disruptive event to sport and to life in general with the climate crisis. So if sport continues into the future, we'll need to see some of those changes. And it might be as small as shifting a week or so, or even time of day, as opposed to the entirety of a season. But starting to get comfortable with that discomfort is really important.
Matt, your thoughts, and particularly from the logistics, right, from a facilities perspective, is this viable?
Yeah, and I was going to say it's a logistical problem again. We're already have a deficit of facilities available. So if we start moving all these sports to the same season, because that's what we would probably have to do, we don't have the inventory right now to handle that. The prime example is anyone in the soccer world knows in the NCAA, they've had a proposal on the table probably for 20 years now to move to a year-long season. And it's been shot down partly because universities don't have fields for soccer in the spring because they're used for lacrosse or some other sport. So until we solve that, it's going to be very hard to squeeze those seasons down into the playable times. And again, this comes down to a geography problem. If you're in the Southwest, you can't play at noon in July. It's just not feasible. So then your time's even a bigger problem. So again, it's got to be a localized response. And then because our sports are so broad and national now, if this state moves to this season, but this state doesn't, now you have another logistical problem from a scheduling standpoint.
I imagine there are a lot of people here who want to take some type of action, right? They want some guidance. What advice would you give them in terms of how to continue to make sports both safe, but also that kids and families have interest? When we did our State of Play Baton Rouge report that came out a couple months ago, a lot of families told us they want to play the indoor sports because they just don't want to sit outside in a climate like Baton Rouge, Louisiana for soccer or baseball games. We'll do basketball or volleyball. What are some steps that people can take? Jessica, you want to go first?
Well, I think first, Matt alluded to this earlier, people don't experience climate in the same ways, so listening first and leading with empathy is really important. Storytelling, community building is a great way to come to know the science behind what everyone is experiencing, but in different levels. And I don't know if you had expected my response to a question about science to be, let's just sit around and talk about it. But honestly, I think that is the best way forward so that we can come to know people and come to know the science and learn the science through sport. That is a huge opportunity for people to activate their environmentalism, their environmental conservation, the things that they enjoy. Even if it's an indoor sport, we can learn about our bodies and our food and our nutrition. All of these are environmental issues, and start there and have a good conversation.
Matt, how about you? What advice do you have?
Two things. One, don't be reactive, be proactive. Sports is notorious for this. We don't make change until something bad happens. And you see it in every form of society now, but people wait too long and then it becomes a news issue. Well, don't do that. Don't get on the news. Start working on this now so you have a plan of action to get you through this. And then work on your policies and procedures. Like if you were running an event or just a league or whatever it is, have policies in place that will address this. Have a heat policy, have a cold policy, have an air quality policy that you can point to and say, this is our rules. Don't make it up on the fly. You have to be consistent, and you have to train on this. Your staff needs to know these like the back of their hand. It needs to be part of your emergent action plan. It's all part of it, because the last thing you want is a player to go down with heat stroke and pass away, and you're not going to recover from that. So you can't wait for it to happen. You have to figure it out beforehand.
Last question real quick for each of you. How confident are you that the youth sports industry will adapt effectively so kids continue to play and feel safe?
I'm very confident because it's already happening. Sport is adapting presently, and the current body of athletes are more vocal and interested in this than any other previous sporting generation. So I feel like these are athletes who will say, you know what, never mind, we are not going to play because they are they're very pro this type of advocacy and action.
Matt?
I'm in the same boat. I'm very, very optimistic for this. Sports figures it out. We figured it out during the pandemic. We always talk about youth sports as recession-proof. The financial crisis in 2008, you actually saw participation go up, which sounds counterintuitive. Post-pandemic, you had more kids come into the sports. So we'll figure this out. It's going to be painful on the road to it, but we have to fight through it. And in the end of the day, we'll find a solution to this.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. One big takeaway, be comfortable being uncomfortable, I think, is one of the takeaways from this. Thank you all so much. Okay.